Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We've got Nick Farabaugh on today. I want to talk to him about the offensive line because we talked to Pat Meyer, Steelers offensive lineman coach, about what they're doing to try to get Broderick Jones and Zach Frazier better, specifically after their performances last season. We'll talk about that and Cory Trice, words from him from Steelers practices over the past couple weeks, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your team, your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Nick Farabaugh. He's back in the house. You know his work from PennLive.com. Nick, now is the time of the year where we get to sit back and relax. Then, oh my God, Deshaun Elliott's extended. I know we're going to talk the offensive line. I talked about this with Alan yesterday. What was your first reaction to Deshaun Elliott's extension?
It's a good piece of business. That's what I saw. I mean, 30th highest paid safety in the league. You lock up a key role player. Now you don't need to draft a strong safety next year. I think that's good business. And so a very underrated piece of this defense last year, his tackling efficiency, Chris, Next Gen Stats had him 108 of 111 on tackling opportunities. Can you believe that? That's insane. Insane efficiency.
Insane. He missed 3 tackles and had over 100. He had 100. Dang,
it's a lot of tackles.
Impressive.
So, I mean, this guy was good in coverage on top of that. No brainer deal. Honestly, this is like a hometown discount. Honestly, I think getting ahead of the curve. So it's a good deal. It takes a need off the board. You can still have a good player here for 3 more seasons. I think that's good all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And it's a hometown discount from a guy who was drafted by the Ravens in his hometowns in Texas. So how about that? Anyways, let's talk about what we came here to talk about. That's Broderick Jones. We got a chance to talk to Pat Meyer, Steelers offensive line coach. I asked him a few questions when we talked to him last Wednesday, and I wanted to get his thoughts and just some of the things on Broderick Jones. Broderick Jones all through OTAs and minicamp, he practiced at left tackle. We've talked about that importance. He also told us he dropped 20 pounds. We've talked about that on the show. And he said at the end of training camp, he wanted to keep the 20 pounds off because he felt that good. Here is Pat Meyer, basically on the second day of minicamp, going over his thoughts and answering questions on Broderick Jones. A lot was made about Broderick switching back from right to left, and he said he worked on losing 20 pounds. What have you seen that's different about him this spring versus the past few years?
I mean, he's working. He's working like Roger's done in the past. He's working it. He's continuing to grow, continuing to learn. So, obviously he's down somewhat in weight, so he'll gain some of that back here over training camp, over next month in training camp. But just quick. He's been into working with Isaac now, and that's the big thing. The big thing is when you change sides, it's like, can tackle flip from right to left. Young tackles like that can. So it's just working with a guy that's going to be next to you, who's Isaac's obviously a 10-year vet. He's going to be working with somebody different, so they're working a lot together.
What are the challenges that you guys tasked with him after watching him throughout last year, where he was going into his 3rd season, that you want him to address this season?
Just being more consistent. He's just some of that, the flashes of where we know he's going to get to. Just being more consistent in that. He's been working at it. Then, like I said, moving him back over to Isaac now, next season vet like that. I know he's been talking to him and helping him. Not that the other guys weren't, but it's just, it's a little bit different for him. Flipping back, but just consistency. Just working on consistency every day, coming out, right mindset, practicing the right way, which has been great. And just continuing to learn and continuing to grow in his 3rd year now. It's got to be a big year for him. We all know that. He knows that.
Nick, you and I watch a lot of tape and a lot of film. We assess players. Broderick Jones allowed the 2nd most sacks in the NFL last year. He allowed the 7th most pressures, both charted by Pro Football Focus. And now he's moving to left. How reasonable would it be for the Steelers to depend on him to be the guy that is protecting Aaron Rodgers, 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, blindside, and expect him to be considerably better than what he has been.
Listen, man, the tape last year, it's rough. Like, it's not just the technique. It's just the lack of having his assignments down, the snap cadences.
Yep.
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff. Like, first of all, before we get even to the hand usage, footwork, paddle, just get the plays right, get the snap cadence down, pick up stunts. Like, let's do the basics first here. If he does that, there will be considerably better play. Like, I'm not even kidding. If he just, I mean, the viral ones where he pulls at the wrong time against the Ravens, right? Like, that happened multiple times over the year where he just misshot something or didn't take the right angle, et cetera, et cetera. Those things are important. If he can be a force multiplier in the run game like he was his rookie year, that's another big step, I think. So his run game production, I think, needs to go up just because his rookie year, he was so good in the run game. Last year, we saw flashes, but not enough. The other thing, and it wasn't in the clip, it was later, and I don't know if you were there, Chris. I asked kind of what it was technically with Broderick, and Pat Meyer said it was like, on any given play, he would do 2 of the 3 things necessary that they taught him. He would have the footwork and the hand usage in tow, but then his pad level would swell, or he'd have the pad level in the hands, and then his footwork would be crazy, or he'd bend at the waist, or his hands would get wide. Like, it would be one thing that's just off, that's just forcing him to not be consistent. And there are flashes. I mean, go to the Washington game. He played incredible against the Commanders. I thought that was his best game as a pro, and you can see some of the flashes of what he could be. The thing is, where can you kind of put all of that together? The mental lapses, can those go away? Plus the technique. I think it's asking a lot for him to put everything together. So I'm not saying you need to see everything come together this year. What I am saying is we need to see a considerable step in the right direction that says, okay, this guy can be your future left tackle. And I think that's going to be the big thing. If he can be considerably better than he was last year, that's a step in the right direction. I think saying the light goes on this year and he becomes like a really good starting left tackle, that's a big leap for him because he was rough last year. So we'll see. I think that's pretty optimistic. But I think realistically, can you get the basics and some of the technique stuff consistency-wise fixed? I think that's realistic for him.
I've said it months ago. I've said it weeks ago. I've said it days ago. I'll say it now, and I will say it for the rest of this season. Everyone's going to be looking at Aaron Rodgers, who the quarterback is, DK Metcalf. The story of this offense will go by the way of its offensive line. And I think Omar Khan, this team, this organization, Mike Tomlin, all need this offensive line to go. And if Broderick Jones can be the first step in getting this offensive line to being an above average unit, which again, I'm not expecting them to be, 2015 Steelers offensive line where they could plow roads open for D'Angelo Williams and name one of the 5th string running backs they had back then. But I think if they can be where the 2013 Steelers offensive line kind of was, and that was a year where they lost Pouncey for the season, but if they're able to get to a point where like, hey, wait a second, they're putting it together. They're picking up blitzes a bit better. They're opening up run lanes a bit more consistently. That's where you want this offensive line to be. And if they're there, Nick, like you said, the tape is so rough with things. It's not just Broderick. Dan Moore was pretty rough. There was breakdowns left and right at times with this O-line. If they get to just that point that I'm talking about there, they're not the elite status, not even the just outside of elite status, the above average status, it will bring something to this Steelers offense that it has not had maybe since 2019 even, because 2020, Pouncey and DeCastro were on their last year really in the NFL.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned this going the way of the O-line. You remember Ben's last 2 years, why they got rid of the ball so quickly and why defenses were able to cheat down? And despite him having still a decent deep ball, like that's why Rodgers can still throw a deep ball. And here's the thing, that Jets O-line last year was awful. Injuries caused that, but, Tyron Smith just falling off a cliff, all of that kind of was a big part of that. Rodgers got the ball out a ton quick, and defenses cheated on that. 32nd in success rate on balls thrown in 2.5 seconds or less last year was Aaron Rodgers. And that's just because teams cheated down on it. And that was with Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. And the Steelers don't have Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. They have DK Metcalf, but they don't have that. And so that's something to think about. So if the O-line steps up, Rodgers can then start to push the ball down the field and can do some different things. And this offense will look more respectable than it was last year. And Broderick's a huge part of that. Him and Troy Fautanu are going to be like the two keys to this. Can the two tackles, which are the two questions, I actually feel very good about the interior of the offensive line. can your two tackles, Troy in his limited time last year, look good in that Broncos game. Let's see if he can do it. Let's see if he can stay healthy. Broderick, can we at least raise the level of consistency, raise the level of play, and get going on the right track here at left tackle? If those two things happen, this Steelers offense can be respectable. I'm not even saying good, because I don't think you necessarily need to shoot for a top 10 offense. If they can be respectable and they can have peaks that can go along with some of these teams where they can at least go toe for toe every now and then, that'll be a good season for this offense.
That'd be I think it would be a good season. I think it would set the stage for where this offense needs to go, especially with the plan to bring in a rookie quarterback in next year in the NFL draft. When we come back, I want to talk about that interior because you mentioned it. Zach Frazier is a big reason why that interior was so good last year, and why I think that is the group, that is the part of the O-line that people are most excited about being more reasonably excited about being good this year. We'll talk about that and what Pat Meyer said about Zach Frazier next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Nick Farabaugh. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you, this show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you stop managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year, only at Monarch Money. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Nick Farabaugh of PennLive.com. Nick, let's get to Zach Frazier real quick. Leading us into that, of course, is more of that scrum with Pat Meyer. Had a few questions on Zach Frazier, and I thought some of his answers were interesting about the potential of Zach Frazier, not just as a player, but as a leader for the offensive line. Here was Pat Meyer last week.
You put in perspective what Zach Frazier was able to do last year as a rookie coming in, and that position, and how he performed, and everything to do with his responsibilities. Yeah,
you throw someone in as a rookie at the center position where he's a quarterback of the line and making all the calls and all the adjustments. It was a big transition for him. It was a big undertaking for him for sure, and he had to do it. He studied a lot. He was up there a lot, and wants to know why he's still learning. He's a second year young man that's playing in the NFL at a very demanding position of leadership and authority up there. So he's still learning to do that, to be more vocal and do that stuff from a physical standpoint. Obviously, his wrestling background and just his raw power and strength. He came along and did a nice job for us last year, and he's gonna just much like Broderick, his next step should be take it to the next level now.
Do you have to be a leader at center? I mean, because he seems not like a vocal type of guy.
He's a leader. He may not be the most vocal, but he is a leader for sure. He says stuff, people listen, and he's directing that. But he is a leader for sure. Do you have to? No. I mean, you want them all to be leaders. They're all leaders in their own way because everybody's built differently. But I like him. He's doing that. He's done a great job doing it. So year 1 to year 2 is going to be a big step for him.
Now, Nick, Pat Meyer is not joking about Zach not being a vocal. Zach is one of the quietest guys you'll come across. Like when we talk to him, I gotta like when I'm editing up the audio, when I have to like crank it up, like, all right, I have to cut my voice down, crank their voice up. Normally it's like a few it's like a little decibels here. Like, okay, get this done. Zach Frazier, I have to crank that thing all the way up. You start hearing stuff from other rooms because he talks so softly. But at the same time, where Pat Meyer's point is, it's not the vocal thing that's the most important. It's being the guy in the moment. It's being the guy that sets the tone, being right. He learned the offense, he learned the calls, and it was such an important thing for the Steelers to have last year. It's something they've been wanting since Maurkice Pouncey, got old and then eventually retired. Zach Frazier, I think, could put himself in the conversation of being a top 100 player in the NFL if he has the kind of season I think he could this year.
I mean, where do you put him among centers? Is he the third best center in football? I think you can argue that.
I think you can argue that, yeah.
Reed Humphrey and Tyler Linderbaum, I think, are clearly above him.
Yes.
But what the next tier is like Eric McCoy and that tier. I mean, Ragnow, after he retired, I think Ragnow was better. But now that he's retired.
Now that he's gone, correct.
I think Frazier certainly is a top 5 center, no doubt. I mean, he was that good last year. He was phenomenal. I think people don't even realize that. And Pat Meyer in the interview revealed he was playing through an ankle injury the last 4 or 5 weeks. It was still playing at a very high level. Zach Frazier was a huge difference for this team in the middle of the defense and middle of the offensive line, just kind of directing traffic, the signals, pointing out protections, things like that. What he was able to do was really incredible. I mean, you look at the offensive line, there was chaos all around sometimes, and they would be like him was like the force that would just be stable. And so Zach Frazier, to me, his next step, I guess, is the leadership department. I don't ever think he's going to be some vocal, rah-rah leader. He might be a lead by example type of guy. But in terms of the on-the-field play, I mean, he can maybe take little steps in certain areas, but he's already one of the best centers in football. I fully believe that. He's a cornerstone for the Steelers, and I think in the next few years, Chris, he's going to be getting a big bowl of cash right on his plate because that's, I think, where this is going. I think he's that type of player.
I think so, too. I think that he's going to be a guy that is a huge part of what the Steelers taking a step forward this year if they do, because when I look at Zach Frazier and I watch his tape, like I said, there's rough things about Broderick's tape, and there's good things about Broderick's tape. Like Broderick's tape isn't all terrible. It's just there's a lot of mistakes. Those mental mistakes go away when you watch Zach Frazier's tape. Like he is doing so many of the little things right, and when you're starting off your career by doing so many little things right, it leads to big things. And as much as the tackle position is important, and they need to get both Jones and Fautanu to step up this year, the center position historically for the Steelers has been, when that position is playing at a high level, the team is playing at a high level. You think of Maurkice Pouncey throughout the 2010s. You think of Dermontti Dawson in the 90s. You think of Mike Webster in the 70s. Jeff Hardings for the 2005 Super Bowl. The only time they won a Super Bowl where they didn't have an all-time center was in 2008, and that was just that was the year where they really didn't have that kind of an offensive line. But Zach Frazier, I think he can be a true difference maker when we're talking about protecting quarterbacks too, and keeping both A gaps locked down and keeping everyone on the same page and being that guy that can communicate across the board. That's something by itself that can make things so much easier for Aaron Rodgers and also make things easier for the running backs when they're attacking those holes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the exact thing. When you're running a wide zone scheme like the Steelers are, it is so important to have the centerpiece. And that center literally is going to be the guy going to reach the backside linebackers, going to take those tough reach angles. Frazier's not even an elite athlete necessarily in terms of like speed and agility. Like Arthur Smith in Atlanta had a guy named Drew Dahlman who now got a big contract to go to the Bears. That guy was a freak athlete just in terms of movement skills. Frazier's athleticism is full on in the hand-eye coordination, the pure strength he plays with. I think the core strength and the actual torque he has is unreal, and it comes from his wrestling background, most likely. He's able to move guys in ways that are really rare, and that's able to open up holes. And those cutback lanes we talk about in those wide zone carries, Chris, I have a feeling Caleb Johnson is going to be running right behind the front side hip of Zach Frazier a lot with the way he's been able to kind of block on those zone runs. And so Frazier's just a great magician at that. And then he's so steady in pass pro. He doesn't make mistakes. He's so consistent. You know what you're getting from him. And so I think Frazier is kind of that cornerstone piece you can look at and say, we know what we're getting out of him every single week. You don't really have to worry about him. Low maintenance player, and he can do so many different things for your scheme, especially on the ground.
I agree. And I think that's the thing, when low maintenance is also important, but I think he's part of why I think there is a reasonable optimism to the Steelers offense taking a step forward this year. You want Broderick Jones to take a step forward. And let's also acknowledge that, like, when when other parts of the offensive line are playing well, it makes it easier on the guys who are still figuring it out. When Pouncey and DeCastro and Marcus Gilbert were lighting it up at center, right guard, and right tackle, it made the job so easy for Ramon Foster, Kelvin and not easy, but it gave them a lot more to work with and balance off of with Ramon Foster, Kelvin Beachum, Alejandro Villanueva, and guys like that. And if it gets to that point where the Steelers are counting so much and reasonably counting on these guys and they're delivering, and you're seeing it stacked there, and Zach Frazier does become that next great Steelers center, I think it puts, again, whatever Aaron Rodgers does, that'll be fine. I think it'll put the sign out there that, hey, the Steelers offense is coming. Like, it's coming along. They're figuring it out. And if they get a couple of these right pieces, get quarterback right next year, it could be in the perfect position to finally get back to being one of the better actual offenses in 2 years' time.
Yeah, that's the key part of it. I will say, the one guy we haven't mentioned among the young core so far is Mason McCormick.
Yes.
I think he is an interesting player. There were times last year where he had great reps. I think the pad level is going to be the big thing for him. He swells his pad level a lot and can get knocked back a little bit. Want to see a little bit more consistency there. But for a fourth-round pick, Chris, when we talk about winning football teams and the commonality between teams like the Eagles and the Chiefs, all these teams have in common is they always have some hits on day 3, right? For example, the 49ers just nabbing Fred Warner in the 5th round. I mean, a heist, right? We can think about the Eagles. They do that all across their roster. I mean, Jordan Mailata is one of the best tackles in football, and he was developed completely out of another sport and country. Like, you can see that. But a 4th-round pick being spent on Mason McCormick, if that guy becomes your future right guard, that's the type of pick that winning teams make. Ramon Foster is a perfect example of that. He was an undrafted free agent and became a linchpin of one of the best offensive lines of the decade, if not the best. So these are the types of picks you need to make. And McCormick seems like a really promising pick there too. So that is just something else I wanted to kind of focus on, because that's how you turn around on a unit very quickly.
I agree. And I think that's what the Steelers could be on the verge of. They still need to actually do it. And we'll see if they actually do it later this year. We'll keeping an eye on that. We'll be revisiting topics on the offensive line because we do want to talk about Mason McCormick, other guys. Also, I think it was really cool how Pat Meyer did highlight how Isaac Seumalo was helping Broderick Jones, and Broderick Jones said it himself later in the week when we talked to him in the locker room. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to go away from the offensive line, back to the secondary, and I want to focus specifically on Cory Trice and where he fits into this defense. That's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Nick Farabaugh. Stick with us. We'll be right back. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh. Nick, let's talk about Cory Trice here because I do think there is an understated role for Cory Trice in this team, in that if Joey Porter or Darius Slay go down at any point, he's the first guy I think they call up. And there is legitimate excitement around him being that potential, like finally getting a role to be able to play on defense a little bit more, getting chances to be on the field and show that he is, and he was an undersold 7th-round pick, and that he could be the long-term partner to pair with Joey Porter Jr. on the outside.
Just got to stay healthy, man. Like, that's the big thing. The flashes we saw last year, the pick in Denver, impressive play. I know he got lit up against Jamar Chase a few times, but you go back to that tape, a lot of promising things from Cory Trice in that game. Honestly, when he's facing Jamar Chase one-on-one in man coverage, and he stacks up some reps. There are some reps where he actually dominates Jamar Chase on tape if you watch it. And so this seems like a guy to me that has a ton of upside. He just needs to play more and needs to stay healthy. If he can do that, the Steelers have a shot here to have something. I do think the role for him this year, and what I would do, Chris, is dime backer. That feels like the right role to me for him. Bring him on in the dime packages. He's a big body in the middle of the field that deters passes up the seam. He's an interesting kind of piece you have that a lot of teams don't have. If he can stay healthy, he was already on teams last year before he hurt his hamstring, so we know he can be a gunner. And so all these things kind of come together. Cory Trice, if he just stays healthy, I mean, all it takes is one injury in that room, and he can have that breakout type of year. I'm very high on Cory Trice. It's just that if he can stay healthy, then I think things will go well. But man, he has not stayed healthy for a lot of his time at Purdue and now in Pittsburgh. So we'll see.
We got a chance to talk to Cory Trice a few times during OTAs and minicamp. Here was a conversation we had with him towards the end of OTAs just before minicamp.
Cory, how has Gerald Alexander made his presence known as the new DB's coach?
Well, I had him my rookie year, so I was kind of familiar with him. But, just him being him, being aggressive and, telling us like stuff he want to see, tell us what we want in the film room so we make sure we come to the field and, put it on tape and stuff. So he definitely brings the juice and the energy, too.
What were sort of the exit interview things that you took from the end of last season and you're applying now so that you can be a better player this season?
Man, I can be one of the best in the game right now, so now I'm just showing up every day, just working towards that. Like, I'm just trying to show up every day, make sure I know all my plays, make sure I'm healthy, so I can go out here and put my hand in the power and help the team win.
You and Joey have now, with Slay here, you've had Patrick Peterson, you've had Dante, you've had a lot of veterans rolling through. Man. How has that helped you guys in your development, learning from all these different vets?
It's been a blessing. Mentally, man, they just been giving us game. Like, they just been feeding us game nonstop. Everybody been open books, so any questions we had they was answering them all, and they just good people, man. So yeah, it definitely been a great advantage.
What do you see your role being in this defense? Like, only so many guys can take the field, but you and Joey seem like guys that are ready to play on the outside right away.
Yeah, cornerback for sure. Yeah, I definitely want that to be the role, but me, man, wherever they want me, I'm definitely gonna put my best foot forward there. So it's on them.
Are you about the same? Might look a little bigger. Maybe
I probably am. I might be a little bigger, but I just gotta just make sure my body ready for it all. So
was that part of the plan, just to bulk up a little bit to get stronger?
That was more so of a me thing for real. I want to put some little more weight on. Just I see how long the season is, and in case they ask me to do anything, I feel like I can be ready for it. So as long as ain't nobody running past me, I ain't really worrying about my weight. You feel me?
So Cory Trice, I think, is another. I just think there's so many players on this roster, Nick, that aren't just bodies. They're guys that either have expectations to be good or can be reasonably expected to surprise people. And that number of players, when you think of guys like Broderick Jones, who you expect him to take a step up this year, Zach Frazier, you expect to take a big step up this year and be even better than he was last year, Cory Trice, who he's in a position where if he doesn't step up, it's like, okay, well, that's a 7th round pick, but you've seen his potential flash, and if he can just stay healthy, maybe he could be that guy. I feel like there's so many guys like that on this roster. And then there's still the rookie class that make this roster very intriguing for me for the things that it could be setting up.
Yeah, it does. And Trice is the interesting piece in that secondary. I found it interesting that he said he bulked up. Remember Dimebacker? I mean, if you're going to play in the box a little bit and you're going to maybe cover some tight ends, that's something I would do probably. So he's not that much bigger, but he's probably like 215 now. So he's going to be a physical player at the line of scrimmage. You mentioned those guys. I mean, you can even think, Roman Wilson now has expectations on him. Calvin Austin III had a breakout last year. Can he take another step? I mean, we're talking, we can go all across the team, Chris, and just go down the list and say, these guys could be interesting. I'm not sure Cory Trice is necessarily going to be handed the top backup corner job because they brought in quality competition in Brandon Echols. Like, Brandon Echols is going to probably have a chance here to push him for that. And that only makes a guy like Cory Trice better. And so I think that also helps, right? Think about the wide receiver room. Even if he's not what he once was, having Robert Woods in that room to push you every day, it is a good thing to have competition. In the slot, they at least have Dante Kent. They have other guys there that will push Beanie Bishop. So there's competition at least there. But there's a lot of players on this roster that I think optimistically you want to take the step forward, but they're questions. I think that's the interesting thing is
they are questions.
When you're trying to map out the list of Steelers needs next year, it's well, maybe they need a tackle, or maybe we won't even think about tackle. Well, maybe they'll need a guard, but who knows? Maybe they'll need a corner. Well, not if Cory Trice steps up. It's there's so many different things that are going to be answered this year because this is a young team, but it's a young team that's kind of stepping into its maturity, if you will, with guys like Joey Porter Jr., Keanu Benton in year 3, other guys just taking another step in year 2, year 3, year 4. That this is a young team in maturation, and the quarterback's going to be dropped right into it next year. And that's going to be an interesting thing. So it would be really good for the Steelers this year if a lot of those questions became answers. And so they don't want a lot of gray. They need black and white so they know what they need to do, who they need to, extend, who's a part of this team's future and who's not. That's a big part of this season, no doubt. So while they're kind of all in with the Aaron Rodgers, the Slay signing, the Metcalf stuff, they're trying to win. This is also as much a transitional year for the future as it is that. So a lot of questions to answer this year on different players, including Cory Trice.
I continue to say it's less about the Aaron Rodgers. It's about the setup of the team around him. If the Steelers can develop some of these young players, especially, I brought it up last week. I'll bring it up again. The 2023 draft class specifically. If you see that class collectively take a step forward, Broderick Jones at tackle, Keanu Benton at nose, Joey Porter at corner, Donald Washington at tight end, Nick Herbig as a backup edge, and Cory Trice at corner. You could really see this Steelers team. This Steelers team will feel a lot different this time next year if all those things happen. Even if they go 10-7 and again and lose a playoff game, if you can feel and see that those young guys are starting to come into their own and that things are feeling different with them, I guarantee you they will look like a much different team.
Well, that's why I thought this year felt like so debilitating, right? You just didn't see the step from Joey Porter Jr. You didn't see the step from Keanu Benton. Broderick Jones was all over the place. Faltano, your first-round pick, was out for the year. Like, it was just like, where's the future pieces? Instead of becoming answers, they were questions. And so this year, if everything goes right, Rodgers could completely stink up the joint, Chris. But if all these guys become answers and legit pieces, you're going to be looking at this team and saying, well, there's a lot of talent on the team. Just find the quarterback, right? And that's going to be the key there. And so while everyone's going to talk about Aaron Rodgers and he'll get the headlines because he's Aaron Rodgers, the rest of the team is going to be much more important to how good this team can be in the latter half of the 2020s. That's going to be key because if these answers become legitimate pieces, the Steelers, if they get that quarterback, load up, baby. I'm telling you, like, load up. They find that right quarterback, the rocket ship is off. Like, look at the Commanders, look at the Texans. The Steelers find the right pieces, 2026 is takeoff.
I'm right with you there. It's why I keep saying the development of these players is going to be so important to the story of this season and this team moving forward. Again, thanks everyone for tuning in. He's Nick Farabaugh. Nick, thanks so much for joining us. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at FarabaugHFB. Blue Sky Nick Farabaugh. Make sure to read the stuff, penlive.com/Steelers. Steelers articles over there. Make sure to follow the YouTube channel, Steelers Breakdown Podcast.
Absolutely. He's Nick Farabaugh. Thanks, Nick, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Instagram, whatever you got. On social media, I'm usually there at Carter Critiques is always my handle. You can find me in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com, including a story on Broderick Jones and how he's trying to take a step forward. That published yesterday. Check that out in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And as always, check me out here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here. You get the show every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes. Back here tomorrow with more on the Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.